Brian's just going to start out just giving us a little bit of history of how this whole thing came about, how Inbound came about,
Sure.
and that whole process, and HubSpot, all that brainstorming.
Sure. So I started this company, HubSpot, came up with this Inbound thing 6 years ago. And in the impetus of Inbound, where the idea came from, I used to be a venture capitalist. And as a venture capitalist, my job was to work with small companies and help them think about how do we grow to be a giant company someday? How do we turn a small company into a big, big company? And I'd spend time with the founders of these companies and the CEOs and the marketing departments. And I would ask them, what's the plan? How are you going to grow this small company into a big company? What's the playbook? And the playbook was similar for all of them. They were going to buy a list and send lots and lots of emails. They were going to buy a list and mail stuff to people. They were going to hire a PR agency. They were going to do a bunch of advertisements. They were going to go to the big trade show. That's sort of the tried and true marketing playbook. And I thought, well, that sounds fine. That's sort of my playbook. I get that playbook. But as time went on and I watched them execute the playbook, my thesis was that the playbook's broken, that it just doesn't work anymore, that people are sick and tired of being marketed to and really getting quite clever at blocking marketing out, whether that's caller ID blocking salespeople out, or spam protection blocking emails out, or your DVR blocking television ads out. That in general, society was tired of marketing, and humans were getting better and better and better and better at blocking marketing out. And this trend just seems to be accelerating. So I was like, the marketing playbook is broken, and I was sort of swimming in frustration because I didn't know what to do with these companies. I was sort of frustrated by it. While this was going on, one of my classmates from school, he was writing a blog, and in between classes, he wrote this little blog. It's called OnStartups.com. And I was looking at them side by side on the traffic to his blog versus the traffic in all my companies. And he was killing me. He had 100 times more traffic than my best company. And he had no money. He had very little time. He had no staff, but yet he was burying us. And the way he sort of described it to me was that I was doing kind of what he called outbound marketing, interrupting people with advertisements, interrupting people with emails, interrupting people with cold calls, and doing sort of old school marketing. And what he was doing was the other way. He called it inbound marketing, where he was pulling people in from Google, he was pulling them in from early social media sites, he was pulling them in from blogs, and he was sort of rethinking marketing. He was sort of transforming the way he marketed to match the way modern humans actually shopped and learned and lived today. And his thesis was that humans radically have changed the way they live and work. The way I watch television today versus 10 years ago is radically different. I have, thousands of stations. The way I communicate, I used to communicate a lot via mail. Now it's all email. I have Twitter. I have Facebook. It's just a radical shift in the way I live, shop, and work. And I think about my phone. My least favorite app on my iPhone is the green one with the phone on. I never use the phone unless it's my investors or my mother calling me. There's this big shift in the way humans shop and learn. And marketers, 99% of marketers are still marketing to my dad, the old school way, and they need to shift and transform the way they market to match the way all of us actually live our lives today. When we first started with the idea, we tried to implement it in some of the companies I was working with, and we had a hard time because it was complicated. All this new stuff is complicated, people trying to get their heads around it. They had to go and buy blogging software and fancy content management system tools and social media analytics, and they had to put in web analytics software and email marketing and marketing automation, and gluing all that together and learning all those different UIs, and it was expensive and time consuming. The basic idea behind HubSpot was how do we pull all that stuff together and make a really modern, simple marketing system to enable marketers to get much more modern and transform their marketing to much more closely match the way humans shop and learn. And that was about 6 years ago. I was just telling these guys, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. I was very lucky. It's worked out very well. Company's grown incredibly fast. We're about an $80 million run rate, growing about 70% year over year. It's just been great, 9,000 customers. And our target market is small and medium-sized businesses. We like small and medium-sized businesses because we feel like they disproportionately benefit from the internet relative to giant businesses.
I overheard a conversation you were having with some of the guys at your table discussing the ability for HubSpot to move into more contextual marketing. Could you describe what that means for people that don't understand what contextual marketing is versus content marketing?
Yeah, I think of everything in a funnel, like a sales funnel, and I think the funnel is radically changing. In fact, when I think about the funnel, when I first started my career, the funnel was you cold call somebody, you get on the phone with them, you mail them a brochure, and then the sales rep sort of drags that prospect down the funnel. Right? The sales rep has the power in the relationship. If that prospect wants discounting information, wants to talk to the founder, wants to talk to a reference, that sales rep's the gatekeeper on all that. And I think of that funnel today as radically different. The sales process starts with the prospect searching on something in Google or finding something on Facebook or finding something on Twitter. And the whole top of the funnel is really that potential customer is kind of on their own finding out information. They don't need to talk to the sales rep for better or for worse. And that sales rep gets involved much later in the process. And that prospect today is much better educated than ever. And so the idea behind HubSpot is how do we enable that whole top of the funnel to work in a much more modern way? And how do we flip it? Now, the way I think you do that in a marketing department is the very top. How do you pull there's all these strangers out there that you want to turn into visitors to your site. How do you turn those strangers into visitors to your site? How do you turn those strangers to your site versus your competitor's site? And I think the key way to turn a stranger into a visitor is content. It turns out creating content really works. You want to kind of think of yourself like CNN or Oprah Winfrey, where you're creating tons and tons of remarkable content. Blog articles, ebooks, videos, webinars, all that kind of content. Create remarkable content. Content's like a magnet that pulls in customers. The better the content, the more customers it pulls in. Great piece of content, people will link to it from other websites. Those links will pull potential customers in. Those links tell Google you're important, so you rank for different keywords. So the key for the top is around content. Now once you've got them to your site, how do you pull them through? And I think of that as more context. How do you create context through the funnel? So let me give you an example. When I visit Amazon.com, they expose to me Grateful Dead stuff, Boston Red Sox stuff, and marketing stuff. That's quite interesting to me because I've never met a soul at Amazon, but somehow they know a lot about me. Maybe when you visit Amazon, you get bourbon stuff, Louisville stuff, and baseball bat stuff.
That's about right.
Yeah. More Louisville stuff. Right. And you've never met anyone at Amazon. The more you do on their site, the more they know about you and the more context they can give you. And so every time I visit Amazon's site, it says something very smart and contextual. Every time I get an email from Amazon, man, it's like they're bugging my phone. Every time I look at their mobile site, right on the money. So I think marketing today is about content to pull people into your funnel and then context to pull people through. How do you give the perfect email that will convert at a very high rate by being very personalized? How do you have every page on your site be very personalized to that visitor so every visitor gets a unique, sort of very personalized experience when they visit their site? That's what I mean by context.
Right. How is HubSpot giving that power to small businesses and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah. So HubSpot's got something unique because we have sort of your database of your contacts, all your email addresses and all your pretty much it's your back end for marketing. And you can take that information and you can segment on what product they've bought, how long they've been a customer, whether they're following on Twitter, if they've looked at your pricing page. And based on those segments, HubSpot also owns your website. It will personalize your website. It will personalize the emails you're sending out. Because your back end and your front ends are tied together, you can create this highly personalized experience, which I think is super cool.
Right, I think and prior to this, honestly, prior to this, it used to be that, and this is short, not too long ago, it was just the Amazons that could afford this type of process. You could not contextually market to your consumers or prospects being a small business, but now this makes it easy, manageable, and affordable. So what are some things that we can look forward to contextually, like in contextual marketing in the future?
Yep. I think the big thing is, I think so most people think of a website as this, it's a fancy brochure online. I think websites are about to go through there's been a massive wave of innovation in email marketing. Email marketing generation 1 was, I've got this list of email addresses of customers or prospects. I create a really nice looking email and I blast that email to all those customers. And that's sort of email 1.0. Email 2.0, some people call it marketing automation, is I've got that list, I create segments, really segment it out into individual personas, and then I send a very personalized email to those people, right? And I maybe program multiple emails based on behavior. I think websites are about to go through that same shift, where your website today, if I visit if we all visit your homepage, we all see the same thing. I think website management 2.0 is everyone who visits your website actually gets a unique experience. And so when I visit your website, I see one thing because it's a first-time visitor. Maybe he's an existing customer, he gets a different experience. Maybe this guy has visited your website 5 times and looked at your webinar, he gets a different experience. I think the future of websites is more these personalization engines, and I think that's coming very, very soon for marketing. And what I look at for marketers is, how many visitors do you get to your site today? And it's like, how do you create a lot of content? How do you get 5x the number of visitors by creating a lot of content? And then I look, what percentage of those visitors converts into a qualified lead? Okay, let's say it's 1%. How do we go from 1% to 5%? So you get 5x the visitors and 5x percentage conversion rate. That changes you're in a completely different ballpark. You are sucking business away from your competition. You're starting to really dominate your industry. And that's the way I like to think about, that's the way I like to challenge our customers, is how do you really dominate? How do you dominate in Google, dominate in Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and how do you do it before the competition?
Is that what the new HubSpot's going to be called?
What?
Dominate?
No.
4.0? No. Somebody tweeted, businesses are having a hard time letting go of outbound methods. What do you usually say to convince them to start adopting inbound?
I would say you get your existing playbook. What I think you should really do, what people do is they stick their toe in the water of this inbound stuff. And it turns out it doesn't work. You can't just stick your toe in the water. Like, I'll give you the checklist. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Twitter page, and we tweet once a week. We've got a LinkedIn company page, and we've got a blog, and we blog once a month. That's I call it cocktail party compliant. Cocktail party compliant, the reason I go into cocktail party compliant is like, it's the Christmas party, and the boss is there, and the boss's wife is there, and the boss's wife, for some reason, read one of my books. And the boss's wife starts asking questions about inbound marketing. Are you SEO optimized? Are you on Facebook or on Twitter? And you get checks next to every box that you've done it, but your toes in the water. And you've really got to jump in at least up to your waist to get a bunch of value, to really turn your website into a magnet, to really start pulling people in, to dominate in Google, all this kind of stuff. And so you kind of have to jump in to get the value. Now, it's a very hard thing to do. So what I recommend people do is they've got 5 programs they're running in their marketing department today. Cut 1 and do inbound marketing, and then measure them. And then what you find is you'll cut 2, cut 3, cut 4, cut 5, and it'll all be inbound over time. But that's a very hard mental shift to make. And these guys are very good at sort of walking you through how to think that through.
All right, somebody just tweeted, what 3 pieces of advice would you give a B2B to grow in this digital age?
Yeah, I think this inbound stuff is more about B2B than B2C. About 80% of our customers are B2B. What 3 pieces of advice? Start a blog, create great content on the blog. Would be I would say content, number 3. Start creating great content.
What was number 3?
Think like Oprah Winfrey. You're a content machine.
Okay.
The thing that's happened in inbound marketing, in marketing in general, is it used to be somebody else would create a newsletter or a website or a TV show, and you'd rent space on somebody else's piece of content, right? You rent space on TV show, you rent space on Google, you rent space on a newsletter, you're renting space everywhere, you rent space on a billboard. What's happening with the internet is the cost to create your own content has really dropped. It's so much easier to create your own TV show, so much easier to create your own anything, that you should create your own TV show, create your own something, and sell your own ads on your own site, basically. Create your own pieces of content that you can market and monetize yourself. Those costs have really diverged, and now it's time to sort of think like Oprah, basically, is the way I like to think about it. Both can benefit from it. A lot of B2C companies have already done this. They're already pretty good at this. I think it applies particularly well to B2B companies. Very few have done it. We're in the first inning of a big shift that's going on.
The point being the B2C companies have already discovered it.
A lot of them have, yeah. Yeah.
More known
It's the second inning in B2C, first inning in B2B. I also think to win, for example, in Google, to win in Google, whatever your industry is, you want to be able to type in such and such in your industry, and you want to be the 4 or 5 of the first 10 items you want to be on there. It's not just about getting more business yourself, it's really also about blocking your competition out. And to win on Google, you've got to create content. Google loves content. And what Google does, when Google's looking at your website, what Google does, it looks at the stuff on your site, and then it counts how many other websites link into your site. How many other votes do you have from other sites, and how powerful are those votes? And when you don't have any content on your site, or if your site is just a brochure online, no one's going to link to a brochure online. But if you got a brilliant ebook or a brilliant webinar and brilliant blog articles, that's like a magnet for links coming in. And so that's how you really end up dominating online, is doing that type of stuff. And it's hard. It's a mind shift, but I think it's a necessary mind shift. I equate the marketing industry very much to the horse and buggy industry. I'm thinking about this today because of the Kentucky Derby. The horse and buggy industry 100 years ago. The horse and buggy industry 100 years ago, everyone got around a horse and buggy. And there were, I read an article in the New York Times, there were 16,000 companies that sold buggies and saddles and whips and all the stuff. And today, 100 years later, there's one, a company called Timken that makes the ball bearings for the wheels. I feel like marketing is going through a similar, like obviously the car industry wiped it out. Marketing is going through a similar transition where the rules are radically changing. There's a radical shift in behavior, and marketers need to really completely change the way they market to match the way modern humans shop and learn and live, or they're going to kind of be left behind. I think it's a critical time. I also think timing is key. Let's just say, what is your name? Yeah, Greg. Greg wanted to compete with me. He wanted to start his own blog, and his blog would compete with HubSpot's blog. Even if Greg is a better blogger than we are, which he probably is, and he starts blogging about marketing, there's a timing aspect to this where we're well ahead. So every time we post a blog article, it goes out to 500 Twitter followers and 200,000 blog subscribers and 400,000 Facebook fans, and it ranks in Google. We have this unfair competitive advantage built in, whereas Greg's got to he's got to kind of climb up the ladder. It's going to take him a while to catch up. So the timing is key. You don't really want to wait until your competitors get to this stuff, because they can get ahead, you get an unfair advantage. I'll give you another example. We talked about Zappos a minute ago. Let's just say that Joel and I wanted to compete with Zappos. Okay, we're gonna go get Zappos. We can design a pretty site. We can get the inventory figured out and the supply chain figured out. We can create their culture. We're right next to the distribution center here, which is a big advantage. We copy everything they do. The problem with us competing with Zappos is our cost to acquire a customer is going to be 10x higher. And the reason our cost to acquire a customer is going to be 10x higher is Zappos has 6 million links into their website. Their CEO has 10 million Twitter followers. They have 5 million Facebook fans. They rank for 50 million keywords. That's just an insurmountable lead. That's a massive moat around their business that we'll never be able to cross. So I think there's a timing aspect to this that's critical. I like that moat analogy. Can I rant for one more minute?
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone know my favorite philosopher?
Bob Dylan.
No. It's Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett's a brilliant philosopher. What he says to his CEOs is you want to build a moat around your business, and you want to make it wide and deep, and you want to make it cold, and you want sharks and alligators and lobsters in there, make it very hard to compete with. That's what Zappos has done. Zappos has all those links into their site, massive Twitter following, massive Facebook following, and they've matched the way they market with the way modern humans shop and learn. And it would be nearly impossible for Joel and I to compete with them because they've lowered their cost to acquire so much. So what you don't want to do with inbound marketing is wait till everyone else does it, because you're going to find yourself climbing over some competitors. You want to be first. Interesting Harvard case study on HubSpot, and it's about segmentations and personas. It's also about how to think about the math behind marketing. And the basic math that that pretty much every business school that graduates from any U.S. College now has is, what does it cost you to acquire a new customer? And then what is that total lifetime value for a customer? And in HubSpot's case, it costs us about $7,000 to acquire a new customer. And the formula for that is what's all our sales and marketing costs divided by the number of new customers. And the total lifetime value you calculate by, on average, how much revenue do you get from a customer over time. So what we want to do as a business is we have a $7,000 cost to acquire, and we have about a $30,000 total lifetime value. So think about it as an ROI exercise. I put in $1 into the HubSpot machine, and I get $4 out. We're trying to get that spread as high as we can. The thing about the internet is it really helps you drop that cost to acquire a customer. And that's essentially what the case is about. We decided on Mary Marketer for the case, if that's what you're wondering about. I think it depends on your industry. For example, these guys here in the safety supplies industry. I could go and look at their competitors, but I bet you none of them have done anything in this industry, and the door is wide open.
Wide open.
Let's say you're in my industry, it's going to be a lot of work. So it's really industry specific. Almost all B2B industries are wide open, that people haven't figured it out yet, and it's still early.
Question, contrast the ROI on inbound marketing versus outbound. And what are the standard measures of success for an inbound program?
Yep. It's also industry specific, but if I look across our customers, they typically see the ROIs 2x on their inbound versus their outbound. It's a much more efficient way to acquire customers, and here's kind of how I think of it. We got Ford Motors across the street here, their stamping facility. If I'm the CEO of Ford Motor Company, I have a lot of assets on my balance sheet. I have cash, I have inventory, I have supply chain, I have all this stuff on my balance sheet, and I want to increase my assets and increase my return on assets. As a marketer, I have a bunch of assets on my balance sheet too. Can you think about what those assets might be? Okay, I'll help you out. No, pages. How many pages on your website? How many links into your website? How many keywords you rank for? How many Twitter followers? How many Facebook fans? How many LinkedIn group subscribers? Those are your marketing assets. And what you want to do as a marketer is increase the value of those assets over time. The thing with outbound marketing is there's no leverage to it. So let's take Google AdWords, for example, as a channel. With Google AdWords, you got a pile of money here, and then this is Google's furnace here, and you're basically taking money from here and you're putting in the Google furnace every month, and then you take more and you put in the Google furnace, you take more and you put in the Google furnace, and Google's growing like crazy and you're dying. There's no leverage here. You sort of put $1 in, you might be able to get something out. With inbound, you create an article today, or you create an ebook or a webinar today, and it's permanent. It's a permanent asset on your marketing balance sheet, and you pull customers from it for years and years and years. Articles I wrote 6 years ago still ranked #1 in Google and still pulling customers. And so it's a different type of math. It's math that scales like interest in your 401k or interest on your mortgage. It's a much different way of thinking about the math. A couple things. If you're a B2B salesperson, first of all, you're a B2B salesperson, you want more leads. You never have enough leads. And so what happens with HubSpot typically is you're a B2B salesperson, you're getting 100 leads a month, and then your marketing department buys HubSpot, and within a year you're getting 300, 400, 500 leads a month. You're getting a lot more leads, and leads are good. Second thing that's good about being a B2B marketer is not only do you get leads from your business, but you get lead intelligence. So somebody comes to your website and they become a lead. Every time they come back to your website, you get an email from HubSpot saying, hey, they're on your website right now. Go ahead and take a look at them. There's a new product inside of that's coming out in HubSpot where every time you send an email to your prospect, when they open it, it tells you when they open it. And so it's sort of watching your prospect for you. So there's a bunch of tools within HubSpot that give you more intelligence about your prospect. So when that conversation happens, you've got much more context and you're much more likely to sell more software.
You wrote a book recently, and I heard it's a bestseller in some country.
Yep.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. I wrote 2 books. One's called Inbound Marketing. That's the book you should, if you want to read more about it, you should read Inbound Marketing. That was a bestseller in the U.S. Then I wrote this Grateful Dead book, Marketing Lessons of the Grateful Dead. Nobody read it in the United States. No one cared. It's like when a tree falls in the woods. Does anyone hear it? No one heard it. But for some reason, some guy in Japan liked it, and he translated it and packaged it up, and it was a runaway bestseller in Japan. So I am a best-selling author in Japan. I'm like, who's a famous author in the U.S.?
Stephen King.
Yeah, I'm like Stephen King in Japan.
Slightly different topic. It's the only one I can think of. Anybody that wants to just raise your hand and ask a question, you can do so.
Sure. Jerry's refers to a word that we have. It's marketing, sales plus marketing. Not very clever. It's about the problem sales and marketing departments have is the marketing department creates all these leads, and they send them over to the sales guys, and the sales guys say, "Oh, these are crap. These are crap, and there's a waste of time." And there's this ongoing war. And then what the marketing department says about the sales guys is, we send them all these leads. They never call them. They never follow up, and there's this constant irritating tug of war between sales and marketing. What HubSpot tries to do is sort of bring them together, and we call it smarketing, where you kind of create SLAs between the different departments so you can have them working together more. And there's a bunch of tools within HubSpot that enable us to do that. So we produce a lot of leads that come through, and HubSpot's got these algorithms we can create that qualifies the leads and gives them a score. And so you can sit down, let's say I'm the marketing guy and Joel's the sales guy, you can sit down and say, if a lead filled out that form and visited your site 17 times and visited the pricing page, their score should be 80. If this lead came and they just followed you on Twitter and read a blog article, their score should be 10. So you sort of agree together on what the criteria are for a qualified lead, and that way that just eliminates all this chirping between the different departments. And so that's what we encourage our customers to do, is get the lead formulas right and hold each other accountable to those lead formulas, and that's brought the sales and marketing departments together in a way that we haven't seen before. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have a customer, it's a gal that actually went to Harvard Business School that I met when I taught the case there, who sells bags, fancy bags. Online. She's doing quite well. It's sort of a very preppy brand. She only sells them in Nantucket and what is on Long Island, the Hamptons. And she's doing quite well with HubSpot. She's got the site up, but she's got a blog, and it's sort of her personality coming through the blog quite nicely. And she'll write about the bag. She'll show pictures of herself with the bag. She's very attractive, like you. She's been very successful with it. There's another company, actually a gal that came out of MIT, who sells a new type of handbag that's got a charger in it for your cell phone and your iPad. So all you have to do is stick your cell phone and your iPad in there, and it's a very nice looking bag. It's Italian leather, and it will charge it automatically, and she's using HubSpot for that. So ironically, for some reason I know 2 companies doing something quite similar. And the nice thing about that is you want your site to reflect your personality, I think, and your taste. And you want your site to be part Vanity Fair and part Mademoiselle and part geeky thing. You kind of want to pull that together. And I think HubSpot's actually quite a nice platform for that type of thing. Yeah. I can connect it with the people. Is there a CRM part of HubSpot? It's an interesting question. At some point we will. The way I think of HubSpot is we started with the stranger to visitor layer, and then we moved into the visitor to lead, and then we went into the lead to qualified lead, and our next step will be from qualified lead to customer. There's a bunch of really small companies that use this for that, but I think for a company of your size, I would use Salesforce.com, or I would use Microsoft Dynamics or Sugar or one of those other systems out there. I think it'd be a pretty good size sales team. Yeah, but it's got a two-way synchronization with those things that's pretty slick.
Yeah, will you talk about that, how that syncs with HubSpot?
Yeah, it's slick. So a lead comes into HubSpot, and when the lead comes in, it's not just a lead of what they put in the form, it's every page they ever visited, what's their Twitter profile, their LinkedIn profile, we collect everything we can on them. And then it syncs into your CRM system, so your sales rep gets that as part of the view in their CRM system. And every time they come back to your site, every time they open one of your emails, every time they do anything related to you, every time they tweet something interesting, it'll show up in your CRM system. So it's pretty slick, actually, the way it works. Yeah?
Are you guys part of the NSA?
And we're not.
No Big Brother going on. No Big Brother. It feels like Big Brother.
Yeah. I'm sure they're monitoring our conversation here.
That's why I wrap my head in aluminum foil so they can't read my thoughts. That's what I do. So what do you see the future? Maybe a 5-10 year, can you give us any sort of forecast where you think inbound's headed, where you think HubSpot's headed?
Yeah, I just think everything's changing, and I think it starts with all of us, that we're all radically shifting our lifestyle and our learning and our living. Wi-Fi's changed so much, the mobile devices have changed so much, Twitter has changed so much, Netflix, our behavior is just radically changing over time.
Right.
And I don't think it slows down, I think it speeds up, if anything. And what we're trying to do at HubSpot is build a modern system to help people keep up with all that stuff, right. Or maybe stay not 2 steps ahead, not too geeked out, but maybe a half a step ahead of where the market's going. And a couple people have commented to me that they feel like Louisville is behind San Francisco or Boston in terms of the internet and this new technology. I personally don't buy it. I feel like the world is flat. And all of us are using Netflix, all of us are using these mobile devices, all of us are using LinkedIn. I think the world is flat, and I don't think there's a timing difference between the coasts and your customers and customers of people in San Francisco. They're the same people. The world is much flatter than it used to be, and I don't think this is a oh, wait to see what the people on the East Coast can do. I think everybody's the same in this game.